Want 10% off and free shipping for in-stock items at Entertainment Earth? Check out my referral link in the description to get that today.
Dragon Ball, horror, kaiju, and more. Steven's Toy Reviews.
Hey there, collectors, what's going on? It's Steven here, and today we have a review of another figure in Super 7's Wave 3 of Toho Ultimates, and this is definitely going to be the wave where if you have not been following along and purchasing Super 7's Toho Ultimates or any of their Ultimates figures, you may be persuaded to do so. We are going to be taking a look at the 1200 degrees Celsius Godzilla. Affectionately, just to make it simple, Meltdown Godzilla here. This is awesome because there have been a couple of ones here or there like Meltdown, and it's just been the normal like 95 sculpt that, let's say, Bandai has done, just in a whole bunch of red. But no, here Super 7 went balls to the walls, and this is Godzilla melting. You can see the skeleton, you can see melting flesh. Not only do we have a nice gory head sculpt, but we also have a skeleton head sculpt as well. This is going to be a unique take on Godzilla, something that when it comes to unique, toyetic, playful stuff, Super 7 really excels at. Is this going to be something that's going to be worth the purchase just because it is so awesome and cool? Or should Godzilla go ahead and melt away into a pile of orange goo and you save your money? Let's take a look to see whether or not he's going to be worth adding into your collection. In the renders, which I do think that Super 7 kind of needs to go away from because they're able to really communicate more to the customer with renders than they can with physical prototypes. I understand their business model, and we can go back and forth on that all day. That's just my opinion. With the renders, they sort of indicated that there would be no translucent plastic. To my absolute, I guess you may say, surprise, and I rather do like it, they use translucent plastic, which I think is a double-edged sword, because as I'll talk about in the articulation section, maybe a bit more than I needed to, I'll jump to the point. Translucent plastic, in my experience, tends to crack. I can think of a few that I basically have lost to time for no reason aside from cracks. But here I say that the figure just looks stunning in person, and the mix of the paint applications that they were able to use really harkens back even to the Thirsty for Blood SDCC exclusive that they released now last year, and this really rivals that. Why? Because yes, they do have the orange translucent plastic, which really carries away and nails that burning Godzilla feel, but they do have a nice black, not only wash, but dry brushing in some areas to really enhance not only the sculpted details, but they do have as well a nice bone coloration that is found in select areas of the figure. So this way you can see the exposed skeleton for Godzilla underneath. On the chest, you can also see a little bit of gory goodness where we are going to have some yellow innards of Godzilla poking through, which is great. Now, if you take a nice closer look at Godzilla, you are going to see some flesh that is beginning to peel off, and it is simply melting away, which is a nice gory detail for Godzilla, which one would think that would not get through the approval process. Now, the black that is used on Godzilla's main body is also carried on over to the skeletal features as well, which is really cool. Though there is going to be the general theme of Godzilla that is going to have some reused parts, don't think that the whole thing is just going to be a copy and paste of the previous files that they had. There are going to be some reused parts, but there are also going to be completely new parts like the melting dorsal plates and, of course, the tail, which will have the exposed skeleton as well, along with translucent plastic for the burning Godzilla counterpart. Overall, this figure looks fantastic, and I would say is an absolute win for Super 7. I'm going to go ahead and lump my 4 times, that's 8, but my 4 times use of boiling water from my Destroya incident with this guy, just because Wave 3 collectively. There were a lot of tight joints on this one, and they did not want to come free with any sort of heat aside from boiling water. So if you do have any sort of tight joints, make sure that you use heat appropriately, and of course, always be safe. Not only for yourself, but if it doesn't want to move, there are plenty of techniques out there to make sure you're able to not break your toy. Because that's what these are. All right, so Meltdown Godzilla. He's basically going to be more of the same from the previous, what do we have, 4 Super 7 Ultimates Godzillas, but there are a few adjustments that were made, particularly with the shoulders. We do have Kyle from Super 7 who did note, actually in my Discord server, that they did make some changes to the shoulder pegs that plug into the body, then they extended them a little bit. I will say that it does come back and be a little bit of an issue on this shoulder, but nevertheless, I think that the articulation, despite being more of the same, is pretty fitting for the figure. So what do we have? Well, we do have a redesigned neck system because, you know, he's melting away. So we do have a ball joint where the head plugs in, and that is going to definitely swap out for the skull head, which we will see in just a little bit. So we can get Godzilla to look up about that far, look down about that far, which is really nice. Obviously rock from side to side, and then, you know, spin around if you need to. That is going to plug in on another ball joint, which does have some nice range of movement for making micro adjustments. So you can just kind of push a little bit more like that and get him to look up more. Because remember, he's going to be melting down at 1200 degrees. We'll go ahead and leave that little error in there because, you know, I'm human. He's going to be melting down and, you know, he's got to be roaring up. Then we do have this neck joint, which is going to be a ball joint, and then that's just going to be a little bit more micro adjustments here. So for the shoulders, we do have the ability with the peg to spin them around, which is good. Okay. And then we do have the hinge, which allows you to T-pose. So this one, no problem whatsoever. This one does not want to go up at all for mine. When I heated it up, not a problem. But now what I have to do is like push down, and then it wants to go up with no issue. So I don't know exactly what that is, but that's just how it functions now. And then obviously to get it back down, I have to push down a little bit, and then it wants to go. There we go. Okay. So for the rest of the arms, basically it's going to be the same. We do have a bicep swivel, and then we do have an elbow hinge, single hinge, goes up. Then we do have forearm swivel. For the wrist, for the hand, we do have a swivel and hinge, up and down or in and out, depending on how you have it right there. Okay, for the bone, the skeleton arm, we do have a bicep swivel at the cut there. Okay. Then we do have as well the hinge. Do be careful because that hinge there seems really, really thin, and the paint does, it is caked in there, I will be honest with you. But we do as well have the typical swivel. Wrist is going to be the same, hinge and swivel. Cool. For the waist, still, if it's a ball joint, it's pretty restrictive. It does swivel around, and that is going to be about it. For the hips, once again, ball joints, he can kick out about that far and can kick forward and back about that far. For the knees, they do hinge and they do swivel. There you go. For the ankles, we do have hinges so we can kick forward with it, and then we do have ankle rockers. Now, I will show you with this one, it does feel like really, really hard plastic, and this is where I had a big issue. So, okay, so it's working fine now, but this was stuck and the foot kept popping off, so something to keep in mind. The tail articulation is going to be very much so similar, since any changes that are going to be coming are going to be after this wave for the Godzilla-like tails. What I will say is that there were a lot of people who noted that they could not get the tail attached to the ball joint. This is going to be a consistent difficulty for some people, but as you can see, you can get it flush. You are going to have to heat this up a lot. Again, I had to use boiling water for both this Godzilla and Destroya in order to get everything nice and loose, and soft in order to get things attached and movable. So as you can see, yeah, the tail articulation is not really all that great, except for when we get up to here, which this is going to be pretty much all new parts. Here, slight sculpt changes, but mostly the same engineering. When we get up here, this is going to be the bulk of the new sculpt, where, as you can see, we do have a better curve, a better bend, and you can get away with even a better bend if we turn it around, which is going to break up the dorsal plate arrangement. You know, we kind of have some of them going backwards, but as you can see, we even have articulation going up to these last few segments, which is really cool. So you can get a nice, better bend out of that. So not only is the sculpt more accommodating for fluid movement, but it is actually pretty nice, and hopefully this is a sign of things to come. So there is better articulation here, but do keep in mind there are going to be translucent ball joints, so hopefully that is not indicative of breakages in the future. So that is the articulation. You can't really get too much out of the tail, but they are working on that apparently for Space Godzilla. Hopefully, at least that's kind of been hinted at. So yay. All right, now we're going to seamlessly transition on over to the alternate head part, which is going to be a skull. And I think even though this is the only accessory this Godzilla is going to come with, be careful because the paint is rather thick for this one. You may break the hinge if you are not careful. Again, use heat to free it. This is probably the coolest accessory that Godzilla could come with, not only because it is Super 7's first attempt at a hinge jaw. I don't know, does that look natural and blend in very well with aesthetics? Comment down below. It's just a generic skull as well, so like, you got a Predator? Congratulations, now you have more than just a xenomorph or a human skull. It took out Godzilla. How friggin' cool is that? All right, so to swap it out, it's actually kind of scary because once again, they did redo the joints here for Godzilla's neck to accommodate for the looks, so you kind of got to be a little bit weird with how you pop everything off. And once again, when you're doing this, be careful with heat. I didn't need to use boiling water to do the original swap. Just a blow dryer was fine, or running under hot tap, but you just line it up and then you pop it on. I shouldn't need heat for this particular demonstration. There we go. Just a little bit of force, and it is a rather tight fit. So there you go. We now have like a zombie Godzilla, and I think this is really cool. But once again, this is going to be the only accessory that is included, but considering this is pretty much going to be the only use of the sculpt for Super 7 and tooling and so forth with the translucent plastic, gonna talk about that. I think it is somewhat reasonable considering the very cool uniqueness of this figure. Now, baby the joints, please. Reason being is I can definitely feel that it is hard, and it kind of feels like some other translucent plastic figures that I have had. Pretty much, if you do follow along on my channel, I do always make mention to make sure that you do take care of translucent plastic figures, because in my experience, cracking is very, very common. I do hope, considering the folks who are in the design area, not necessarily higher up, they do really care about Godzilla. So with that being said, hopefully that was something that they were able to work and avoid, because like the dorsal plates are kind of soft-ish in some areas. So hopefully that's something that they thought about and they worked to avoid. But nevertheless, with translucent plastic, it seems to be a bit more prone to cracking, and hopefully that was taken care of. But I expect this is a matter of when, not if. Hopefully it's not going to crack, but nevertheless, baby it. If you are looking for other effect parts, like maybe the Tamashi effect burning flame, you know I have videos to help you out to locate buildings and effect parts. Yeah, there you go. And here's a size comparison for Wave 3 alongside some other figures you just might have. Of course, we're going to put Wave 3 together just so this way, if you're going to get them, you have an idea of how they're going to be together. So buy now, skip, or wait for a deal. This is so unique that I feel like every Godzilla collector should at least consider picking this up, and I think that this is going to be a home run for Super 7. Sure, there are going to be some areas with this figure that can definitely be improved, but nevertheless, I think this rocks. I think Super 7 is really setting the bar with these more so unique takes on the Godzilla property, and this is where they should really focus in, and they proved it with this figure. I do hope that they are able to get into the more obscure stuff, the obscure designs, and even come up with their own original ideas, and definitely pay homage, or homage, whatever you prefer to call it, or even pronounce it, and hey, Super 7, can we get some Trendmasters tributes someday? Okay, now that that's out of the way, this is definitely worth the purchase, so if you are thinking about it, pick it up before it's out of stock everywhere.